Hey guys, welcome to Braddels Gaming and to another episode of my Far Cry 5 custom map series. In this series, I feature the maps that I create in the Far Cry 5 arcade, and today we're having a second look at my latest map, Uphill. But if you haven't checked out part 1 yet, I definitely recommend you go and check that out first, as I provide all the details into how I built Uphill. I'll put a card up on the screen right now for you guys to click through to that video, but otherwise today I'm going to be sharing gameplay footage of my map in action, reflecting on the pros and cons of this particular map, whilst also giving you guys some strategies you can employ when playing my map. Now I thought I would mix the format of this video up and this time start with the cons of this map. These are things that could be improved. Now the first issue I experienced with this map was the spawning. In part 1 I elaborately explained a new type of spawning technique I was using for multiplayer that I implemented in the first version of this map. Now, whilst the spawning system flipped the spawns around so that each team wouldn't be spawn killed as much, it actually turned out that the blue team, the American team, spawns on the beach were closer to the red team, Vietnam team, spawns up on the hillside fortress. And so instead of the blue team spawning on the beach like I intended them to, they were spawning at the bottom of the main hill. However, I quickly rectified this, updating the map with new spawns by removing the blue spawns at the bottom of the main hill and adding extra blue spawns in the beach part of the map to not only compensate for this change, but with a continual goal to reduce spawn killing on my map. The map now flows a lot better, although sometimes, as you see in the gameplay, the game won't always spawn the blue team, the American team, in the landing boats, but sometimes under the houses near the landing boats. This isn't too much of a game-breaking mechanic, but it does ruin the narrative and immersion of the map a little, especially considering I'm coining this map as a beach landing map. Now moving on to the pros, and it would be the sheer detail and terrain of the map. When playing this map, I received lots of feedback from my fellow Far Cry friends that the detail of each section on the map is awesome and that the terrain is realistic looking. This was awesome to hear, as I always try to ensure that each one of my maps has great attention to detail and is aesthetically pleasing for the players. Additionally, this was the first map where I really tried to experiment with the terrain tools in the Far Cry editor, so for me to pull off a map like this that has lots of verticality via the terrain level changes, both inside and out of the map, is a big relief. My goal was also to ensure players would be immersed in a realistic looking environment, which I definitely think I have nailed. Some of the details I'm specifically impressed with is the Vietnam hillside fortress and bunker areas, the naval ships on the ocean, and the mountains surrounding the playable area. I'm also pretty impressed with how the landing boats turned out on the beaches. It was my first attempt at creating a landing boat from scratch. Obviously there's no pre-made asset that can be served as a landing boat. I experimented with using actual attack boats, but I didn't really want players moving in those vehicles because that wasn't meant to be the focal point of the map. The focal point of the map is meant to be infantry focused combat, and so I decided against putting actual attack boats in the map. Instead, I made these makeshift creations, and as a novice in terms of trying to create things out of generic shapes or sort of use multiple assets to create new sort of objects, if you will. That's not really a department that I'm really that strong at, but I was still very happy with how the landing boats came out nonetheless. Now in terms of how the map flows, I already mentioned earlier that the map flows really well, but what I mean by this is that it is balanced for either team, even the attacking team. Although historically the attacking team would usually suffer higher death tolls, this is a multiplayer shooter, and so historically accurate battles isn't always the most fun thing to stimulate. The defending team, the Vietnam team, do have the higher ground, but they don't have that much of an extreme advantage over your typical beach landing map, where the teams on the hills and the bunkers have mounted guns and they can basically spawn kill, the attacking team pretty much immediately. My map only has one mounted gun overlooking the beach in a very tight sight line, and so, it still gives the opportunity for the Vietnam team to maybe pick up a few kills at the start of the match, but it isn't extremely overpowered as you do find in other beach landing maps. And so this means that most of the combat takes place on the hill, which is the centerpiece of the map, and also the middle of the map, where I intended the combat to take place. Because I'm trying to really stimulate this sort of infantry-focused, intense battle where it doesn't necessarily take place on the beaches, even though this map is coined as a beach landing map by myself. It actually takes place much further beyond where the beach is. The beach itself on this map is quite small, and so even though that serves as kind of the inspiration for which I built this map upon, most of the combat takes place on the hill, the middle of the map, the centerpiece where I intended it to be, and so I'm very happy with the map flow, and I think it works really well in terms of giving each team a good opportunity to attack each other and, sort of make it balanced for either team as well. You'll see that the final score between either team really reflects this point, and that the 50 kill limit, the score limit that I placed for either team to achieve, is right bang on the money. I think our team gets to the 50 kill mark just before the 10.5 minute timer ends, or something like that, maybe like 40 seconds to spare. And so I definitely think that the 10.5 minute countdown and the 50 kill limit for either team is definitely the right amount in terms of how this map flows. I find that this map is definitely better in full lobbies, as you'd expect most maps to be, as most maps are probably designed for full lobbies. And so my map is no exception to this rule. I find that if you do have a lobby that's maybe 8 people or lower than that, then the map can be a little bit of a slow-paced map. But if you have anything above that, then it does really seem to get a move on in terms of how fast or slow-paced it actually is. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail about the loadouts. I do extensively break down how I balance each team's loadouts against each other in part 1. So, like I said earlier, if you haven't checked out part 1, which is a full map breakdown of Uphill, I definitely recommend you guys go and watch that now, and then come back and watch the rest of this video. But otherwise, what I've done with the loadouts is that they're asymmetrical to one another. And so I was trying to provide a little bit of historical accuracy in terms of what weapons the Vietnam Army would use in the Vietnam War, as opposed to what weapons the Americans would use in the Vietnam War. And so one thing I've done to balance the loadouts is a technique that I'm calling class mirroring. Now, I just made that up on the spot, that term, but class mirroring is where you provide a similar weapon from one loadout to the next on either team. And so you notice that when you see the weapon circle come out in the loadout screen, at least in part 1, you'll see that there is a gunner class for each team, a Vietnam gunner class and an American gunner class, and so the Vietnam gunner class has got an LMG, an MG42, and the US gunner class has also got a LMG in the form of the M60V. And so it kind of gives each team the ability to use some awesome firepower for either a team, and sort of balances it out that way. It's not the same weapon, but it does provide a similar sort of approach in terms of how much firepower it does provide. Now, to finish up this video, as promised, I'm going to be also telling you guys some strategies you can employ when playing my map if you do want to do well on this particular map. And my first strategy is to ensure you're aware of the weapon pickups on the map. There is one RPG rocket launcher, one M79 launcher, one SVD sniper, and 2 super weapon pickups littered throughout the map. And I know you guys are probably tired of me saying this, but definitely check out part 1 for the locations of these unique weapon pickups, which can be key game changers in deciding who wins or loses the battle on this map. Now my second tip is to try and be the first team to make it to the truck with a mounted gun. If you can secure this truck and plant it in a well thought out position, your team will instantly have access to one of the best guns in the game, the 50 caliber mounted machine gun, which will cut through any enemy like a hot knife through butter. Finally, I recommend to use all the available cover on the map, whether this be vegetation to sneak past or hide from the enemy, or solid cover such as trees or structures to take cover from enemy fire or to use yourself as firing positions. And don't forget about the narrow, rocky flanking route on the hill, which is a great way to avoid confrontations and outflank unsuspecting enemy players. But otherwise, that sums up this gameplay breakdown for my latest map in the Far Cry 5 arcade Uphill. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to check out this map if you're on the Xbox One, and remember to like this video and share it with your friends. If you're new around here, please subscribe and hit the bell icon for future channel notifications. But otherwise, I'm Braddels Gaming, I'm signing out now, and remember to have yourselves a great day.